Okay, so I want my bulb to be about 4 inches tall. So I'm going to make sure my ortho is on, and I'm going to make it 4 inches. And we can scale it later if we like. Then, since I have somewhat of a reference line here, I'm going to go ahead and attach my image. I'm going to go to my light bulb, find it in my drop down. Here it is. I'm going to have it specify on screen. Okay, and then I'm going to place it. Now look, it's a little bigger than what I want it to be, but it's fine. I can place it there, and I can eyeball it if I want, or I can just leave it. Remember, I'm going to probably want this to have some transparency because I'm drawing on top of it, and then I'm just going to scale it. I'm going to scale it from this base point, right? Now I could eyeball it because I'm not doing a precise engineered piece, right? So I'm going to leave it around that, which works for us, okay? So I would say the first thing you want to do is create your cylinder for the base so you have a central axis to work off of. You don't have to. You can definitely do this profile first if you like, but that's up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and determine the width I want it to be. So I'm just going to hit DI for my width, and I'm going to want it at, like, I would say 6'8" in diameter, and we're going to go with 5'5" in height. Interesting. So go to your cylinder, and I'm going to make this, since I want it 6'8", it's going to be 3'4", and enter, and then I want it to be 5'5", so it's going to be 7. Okay. So if I look at it, it should be about the right height. If I'm not happy with it, that's fine. You can go ahead and shift it and change it, because guess what? You have properties over here. So I'm going to change that actually to 0.55. So here it is. All right, I'm just using it as reference right now, and now I'm building things up on top of this. So remember, I said you're going to have to do a helix. So grab your helix, and you want it to be the same height, the same diameter as the actual cylinder, but we actually want it a little bit taller because it needs to cut through both planes of this. So if your snaps are off, you can just go ahead, look at it from the side, and pull it up just enough that it's going to cut it, and then do the same down here. Now, with the picture in hand, you're going to have to find how many cuts you have in it and how many turns yours is going to have. So I'm just going to go with 1, 2, 4. I'm going to go 4 with mine. And I need to make sure all 4 are within the cylinder itself. So right now I have 1, 2, 3. So let's go 4. And that's probably going to be a better representation of what I'm looking for. Then mine is a little bit like a triangular cutout is what I would say. So let's determine how we want this to be. So I'm going to, actually mine's a little bit more rounded than that. It's not quite a triangle. What I'm going to do though to make your life a little easier is I'm just going to show you how to create this cutout just eyeballing it a little bit. So what if I just cut it here, okay? And I'm going to turn this off, and I want to make sure my depth is okay. So now I'm going to mirror this over because I want both sides to be very similar. Turn my snaps and my ortho back on for this part. And I don't want it to be a point. I want it to be a blunt end. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that off, and then just trim out my excess here that I don't want. Okay, and I'm going to use that, and we'll see how it goes. I will most likely want to soften it up, because if you look at mine, it needs to be softened. And the other thing I'm looking at is it may not be big enough for this crossover, because if you look, I have a very small piece here. So I'm going to go ahead and scale up what I created and see if that's going to give me the look that I want. So I will just go ahead and do my sweep and see if it's in the right orientation. But as you can see, it's pointing out, right? That's not what I want in. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go back, undo that, and I'm going to mirror this so that it's facing a different direction. Now you might have to rotate it. You might have to change it in a different way on a different plane. But we'll see. Okay, so now you see this is pointing in and it'll cut this in. Now, you can do a fillet edge on this, right? From here along this edge, obviously way too large. Let's bring it down to a more reasonable amount. And always press your down arrow to get to radius. And let's do 0.5 and see if that's better. Still too big. So you may have to play with it a little bit. And I want both sides to have the same. So let's do something like that. All right. That looks kind of like the profile I'm looking for. Now we have to see if when I cut this, it's going to create what I want it to create. I would go ahead and put it in conceptual at this point so I can see it. And then subtract. So I'm going to say, I want to keep this and I want that to be gone. Now, I'm pretty happy with the design. Now, as you can see, this really did need to be larger. It needed to be larger, probably by a magnitude of 2, but my cut-in didn't need to be larger. So I would make that modification if I was you. I would go ahead and increase the overall length of my initial line, but I would keep the other lines in the same dimension so that I'd have the cutout proper, and then this would appear right. I'm going to move forward just so that we can get through this. So then the next thing we need to do is make this cap at the base. If you look at mine, it's rounded at the bottom after the threading, and then it has a not quite triangular, but a coned shape at the base. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to raise this up so I can look at it a little better. So I think what we can do is extrude this face. So let's see if we can do that. Let's try an extrude face. Select the face. No. There it is. Extrude the face. Press enter. And then if my overall height was 0.55, I really just need a very small amount of that to create the base that I want. So let's say I do 0.1. I'm just going to go straight down with it. And that will work for me because now I just really need to fillet that edge over. So I'm going to do a fillet edge on it, select it, and it needs to be bigger than that. That's interesting. It should be all the same, but it doesn't want to be, so I've got to fix it. So now I make sure every space is selected so it's all the way around. I'm not happy with how big it is, so I'm going to change it to 0.05, and that's going to give me a better look like my design on the actual light bulb. So from there I have this little cone shape, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change my plane to this face so I can work directly on it. So I want to do, what I'm going to do I think is a loft. And I'm going to do 3. So I'm going to do the base amount I want it to be. And I'm going to do a 2D object. Put the center point of that out to the edge. That looks like it's too far down. Okay. To this edge. Okay. Turn your snaps off because you don't want to be messing with that really. Okay, and then I'll do it. Okay, and then I think I'm going to look at it. Okay, make sure it's where I want it to be, which actually I think it's overextending. So I'm going to change the diameter to 0.55, and that should shorten it. Okay, so like I said, you're gonna have to play with it. It's yours to design correctly. So then I have that one created. So the easiest thing in my mind, maybe not yours, but my mind is make sure nothing is selected. I don't know why it's doing that there, but select your single entity. Do your blue crossing box, so only what's completely enclosed in the crossing box is selected, and then we're going to copy it. I need to be on this plane now. Copy. And then I'm going to raise this and then that. Okay? So I don't want, actually, I'm going to raise 1. And then I'm going to change the diameter of this because I want that straight, I want that cone look. And so let's do, let's do 0.4. That's probably going to give me what I'm looking for. And then what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll go straight up just a hair. So now what I should have is my base. Curve, cone, okay? Now, and this is right, but let's go ahead and shrink this one. Here. Make that. Okay. So a lot of times with designs, you don't know exactly how you want to make it until you've already done it. And then because you're using a loft, you can manipulate it. Now, if I wanted to, and that feels better to me, I could use these pull points to make it bigger or smaller. But I'm going to leave it like that for now and then worry about my profile for this glass bulb. Okay, so let's go back to WCS. Let's look at it straight on. Okay, and then your object isolation and use the center of the sphere that you selected. And make sure that aligns with your overall design. Okay, if it doesn't, you can always shift the image. The problem with shifting the image is that it kind of hides on you. Okay, so we'll leave it like that. This can again go hide because you don't necessarily need it right now. And we're going to work on this. Now, what I would say is to start, you're going to create your width and then make sure this is turned off. And for a certain portion of this, it's just a straight, it's pretty much a straight line. But for up here, you're going to be working with arcs. And they're kind of unique because you got to kind of know how to manipulate them to be what you want them to be. Okay. And you can't just, the arcs are going to be consistent with having a midpoint. So both sides of the arc are going to look the same. So you may have to make smaller arcs consistently to create what you're hoping is the overall bulb. So you just come along here and less is usually more, but you can always come and change things as you create, okay? And then, but you want it to look clean. So just make sure what you're doing works for your design. And then if this is going to end up here, I think I'm pretty happy with that. So go ahead and get all of that together and join it. Now, what I'm going to do is a little different than what I told you in the instructions is I want to create this glass piece, but I'm going to do it with an offset of my original design. Okay, so say this is my overall glass, and then down here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is should all be joined at this point. Okay, revolve. Let's see if it's happy with it. Sometimes it's not. And that's fine too. Okay. And then 360. You want to go all the way around, okay? But it should be hollow inside. Now, is the base hollow? No. Solid, okay? And if I look at it in X-ray, you can see that it is a solid shell, but that there is depth in it. Now down here is closed, and we can always punch through that if we wanted to in the end, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cylinder. Oops, didn't activate. I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to make it, sorry, I need to change my plane to this face. And then I want to make a cylinder. I want to make it here. I want to make it the width that I have of this. And I'm just going to go in a smidge, 0.05, okay? Now, that's going to help me make my filaments. So I'm going to isolate this one too. So now I just have this piece. Okay, so I know that that's that interior portion of my bulb, and I'm going to make my filaments on top of that. So this is really just creating a bunch of cylinders. So this cylinder I'm actually going to increase in height. I'm going to grab it though. And sometimes this gets in the way. Okay. And I want to grab it and put it. Okay, let's see. So I want to increase it in height because if you look at it, it has this piece that's there, but it is curved here. All right? And glass kind of bleeds into it. So what I want it to do is I want a fillet edge on that. And it's going to be a substantial fillet edge. Let me see what the radius is on that. So let's go 0.6, make it a little bigger, okay? And I think I'm happy with that. Then I have this cylinder here, and I can use the center point again for that. So now I'm just going to use it on the face, and I'm going to use it on this face now, and I'm going to do a cylinder. It's going to come off of here, and I'm going to make it, I should have looked at it from the front. Let's see. Let's make it like this big and okay. Now, not thrilled about it, so I'm going to change its radius to 0.12. That was not what I wanted to do. That was what I wanted to do. My height I'm fine with, and it does have a curve to it, so I am going to fillet that one too. Okay. This one won't be as dramatic, but so change that if you want to. I'll just point it back to the 5. Okay. And then I have this long cylinder that goes all the way up to the top for my filaments to be around. Okay, so again, I'm going to switch my face to this face, okay, to be the one I'm working on. I want the center of this face to get my cylinder. I want it to be small, and then oh, that was nice. So what I'll do is I'll just fix the height, and then I'll fix the size to be what I want it to be, which is not anywhere near what it looks like right now. And I think that's still too big because I do want it smaller than that. And that can be, okay, something like that. Okay. So then this is rounded up at the top. I don't want to waste your time. Is put a little sphere at the top because you want it rounded. And then just union it together. Okay. Now, you have your exterior shell, your helix done. Now you just needed your filaments. Now these are going to be a little more tricky, but you have to determine how to do these. So what I would say is you're going to go ahead and create your filaments Now mine just come out kind of at an angle. So I could probably just, for these, make sure my snaps are off, decide on my height that I'm going, and then just pick my angle that I want it to be at. And then it's a circle. So then we can sweep it with, you gotta make the circle first, just a mini circle. Doesn't even matter how big it is at the moment because you can always change it. Okay, sweep. But it does need to have some type of body so you can put light on it. So say that's your filament. Now, mine taper and have like a little taper pot. So you can add that as well, which would look nice. Let me just go through like the detail of creating the polar array. So I've done it all. I'm happy with it for the most part. This is unnecessary now. But I need to attach it. So say I'm just going to attach it real quick so you can see what I'm doing here. But you'll add your details as you want. So say I just attach it down here like that, just for time constraints. Okay. Okay. So what I can do at this stage is I select my object. I should already be on the right plane. Choose polar array, go around the center of my object, and then choose how many I want. That's 5. I think there's 4 on mine, so I would just choose 4. Okay. And then I have that set up the way I want it to be. So then if I look at it, and this happens a lot where you go into a perspective view, but you can always change it back right here, okay, to parallel. I prefer that. Now what I would say is go ahead and end your object isolation. This is going to be in the wrong orientation compared to the rest of your objects, but that's easily shifted. Go ahead and select it like that. Make sure it's the only thing selected. If it's not, then come in and unselect that. Hold your shift key down and reselect it. I'm going to group that. And the reason I grouped it is so it'll stay all together, but I didn't necessarily union it, which I could have done before, but just so the difference, but just know the difference between grouping and union. Grouping, I can ungroup and still modify the different objects as I see fit, whereas union, it's there. It's stuck together. So I'm going to do a 3D rotate. I'll make sure my ortho's on. I'm going to rotate from this top point, and I really just need to rotate it to the side. Okay. That way. Okay. So now I can select it easily. I should be able to grab my base point of it. We'll see. It might not let me. And if it gets like wonky about the base point, that's not really a big deal because you can always look at it and just move it into place. Place it on a center point. So, you know, it's easier just to place it on a center point and then move it as necessary. So if I look at it like in conceptual, I pretty much have my bulb. It's all centered. Now, the last thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to add your material. So remember, you can't do that in conceptual. So go ahead and move this into hide. You don't need that anymore. You're going to want to keep these pieces separate because of the materials. All right. So put it into realistic. And mine is silver, but the cap is black. So the majority of this piece is silver. I'm going to go to visualize, materials, open my browser. Make sure you have thumbnails on right here so you can see things better. And I'm going to go with a metal. And let's just do, you want something clean. We'll do a polished aluminum on that. Okay. And then down here, I want it to be dark. So we'll do ionized black. Yep. Hit the wrong one. We'll do ionized black on that. Okay. Now, say I want this bottom piece to be a different color. Maybe I want it to have more of a gold tint to it. If you hold your control key down, it'll select your faces or different faces. So now I have both those faces selected. So if I wanted this to have a satin gold color, once it's selected, I say assign to selection. And then we'll see. Maybe it didn't take it. So what I would do is I constantly would look at my design while I'm doing it in render and then see, oh, okay, so it did take that. This does look like the metal I want, and this does look and appear to be what I want, just initially. Now that I'm looking at this, I don't love this detail right here. So I would fillet that, and you might be able to, might not, depending on, and then look, do you see that there? This happens. So I was able to fillet my shell, but this is that internal piece of the platform for the filament. So go ahead and you'll do another fillet edge for this piece. Okay. And just make sure nothing in here is doing anything awkward. And it looks pretty good. Okay. So now put it back on realistic. And you'll go to glass. And I think clear is probably the easiest to use for this, and just hit your. So then if I do that, it should take on a different look in your render. And it does say clear there. So then this, I'm going to go ahead and isolate it and hide it. I guess I got to do both. Okay. You see how both, now they're both clear? Because remember I had the shell around the outside. So this one I'm going to also isolate and hide. Okay, so now I have these. So this I want to be the clear as well. Then I'm going to want the filaments that are attaching it, let's say, to be dark, because that's how they are. So maybe they're these need something. So I think the easiest way to do these smaller pieces is if you select them all. Because who wants to go around clicking and hoping that you're grabbing the right thing? Right click on the color and assign to selection. So they'll be dark. And then play around with glass options for the filaments. So if you notice, you have on here bulb, light bulb on and off, or you have different illuminating materials. Okay, let's try, we'll select these. And we'll do this one, assign. So then go ahead and just give it a quick look before you do anything else and see. Okay, so the only thing that's illuminated right now is the actual filaments, which that's fine. If I go ahead and end object isolation and turn this off, delete it even, I don't even need it anymore, and then get rid of this profile that I don't need anymore either, render it, and let's see what it gives me. Okay, still can't see the glass, which is fine and expected because guess what? I don't have it in an environment. So you'll see the difference that it makes when you put something into an environment. So we're just going ahead and shell this, and I'm just going to take off 3 faces and make it. Okay. So now it's here. Sometimes hard to see. Make sure it's not embedded in it. So I'm going to go something like this, I think, and zoom in on it. Okay, so here's my bulb. Let's go ahead and go to materials. And I'm just going to choose a paint to paint my environment. And let's make it just a happy color, or make it whole thing pink. Okay. So then if I look at my bulb with my render, now that it's in an environment, you should have the glass showing through. Now this is a little dark. You're going to want to manipulate it. And of course, if I don't have it zoomed in properly, it's not going to have the nicest appearance if you zoom in on otherwise. So make sure this fills at minimum the screen. Go back to visualize, render, and render to size, and you'll see it'll take up more room and be cleaner. So what I would do with this one, you're going to want some extra lighting over on this side specifically because you're getting some shadow effect. So I would do custom lighting, and then I would probably change the glow of these filaments to be like a yellow.